First question that I'd love to start with is, what does being neurodivergent mean to you?
To me, being neurodivergent just means that my brain works in a way that's different from the majority of people.
Maybe give a couple examples of how your brain seems to work differently than most of the people around you.
Yeah. I think I have a couple of neurodivergences that are commonly considered
Sure.
neurodivergences. That would be autism and OCD. I definitely feel like autism affects me a whole lot more. So that's typically the one that I think about when I think of being neurodivergent. My brain works autistically. I
Hmm.
have sensory problems, social deficits, all of the things that come along with that.
Can you share maybe just one example of a social challenge that really affects your life?
Yeah, I mean, I don't struggle nearly as much as I used to when I was a kid, but I think
Hmm.
that's because my environment has changed, not because I've necessarily improved. When I was in elementary school, I was bullied and ostracized from my peers. I never felt like I could fully connect with them the way that I saw them connecting with each other. That continued all the way through my schooling, even though it got easier the older I got. But yeah, I never did very well socially.
So there was always something that felt different, and you
Yeah.
noticed that early. So when did you first start to notice or feel different?
Probably as early as kindergarten, really.
Okay. I think that's an interesting point, is that before you were pushed into a social setting where you're kind of forced to socialize with strangers, back when you're just a little kid in your own home, you don't necessarily remember anything being weird or strange about your experience.
Not socially, that's for sure. My family has always been very accepting of me, and
Mhm.
I think generally have been neurodivergent. And so we thought a lot of things were normal that are not necessarily neurotypical.
Hmm.
Before elementary school, there were definitely still signs. When we lived in a one-story house in my bedroom, I would refuse to sleep if the sprinklers were on outside because it was loud.
Hmm.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Definitely, there were signs, even though I wasn't really aware of them yet. My family was.
So looking back, what are some of those early signs that you or maybe even your family didn't notice at the time, but looking back, you're like, oh my gosh, like that was a neurodivergence thing.
Yeah, like the sprinklers thing, the picky eating thing. I also didn't flush the toilet for a very long time after I was potty trained because the flushing of the toilet was loud and I didn't like the noise of it.
I think that this is a common thing with neurodivergence is outside looking in, there are these things that are different and they don't understand why. But now you can
Mm-hmm.
say, that's because the flushing was super loud. Has that ever been hard where you feel like other people judge you harshly and you feel like, is there something wrong with me? Like it's a moral failing on your part?
Yeah, that has been probably the hardest part of being autistic my whole life is the judgment from other people. Not so much now.
Mm.
I still get judgment, but it affects me a whole lot less because I'm so much more confident in myself now.
Yeah.
I think having the vocabulary to describe my experience and meeting other autistic people has been really helpful for that.
Mm. Yeah. When did you discover that you were autistic?
I discovered that I was autistic about 4 years ago. It was like the second half of 2020 ish. I was reading my scriptures one day and I got the impression from a verse like, open YouTube and search autism in women. And so I did, and I found a video from a YouTuber called Yo Sam D Sam, and that was the moment that I knew.
What was it in the video that like locked it into focus for you?
I just remember it felt like suddenly everything fell into place. I understood everything about my life in a way that I didn't know I needed to,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
Oh, well, yes, it definitely resonates with my experience as well. So tell me more of like, what are some things that before this discovery and paradigm shift were fuzzy and blurry and they locked into focus once you put it into the context of autism?
Yeah, I guess special interest is one that we haven't really talked about too much yet. When I was a kid, I was really interested in birds, like bird watching, all of that. And my peers definitely made fun of birds whenever they got the chance when they were around me. So I learned to not share my interests with my peers at school. Mostly adults thought it was cool. So that was a go topic when I was talking to adults, but absolutely not at school. In college, my roommates and I had a quote wall that we would keep every year. We would write it on the fridge whenever someone said something silly. And I remember one of our quotes was, we were going out to eat, and in one moment I remember saying, "Is no one like me? Like, where are the people like me?" And the reason it ended up on the quote wall is because my best friend misheard what I said and went, "I like you."
Oh.
And I feel like that's just a description of my life before I knew, because it was like I was searching for people who were like me, but it wasn't what I was looking for.
Yeah, and the fact that they would misunderstand you on such a fundamental level for a simple comment. That's funny.
Yeah.
Is no one like me?
Is no one like me? I like you.
I is like you. Yeah. That's okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about special interests. Like you said, we haven't touched on that much. So back in the day, birds were one of them. Are you still really interested in birds?
I still love birds. I'm not nearly as into it as I was in late elementary school, like middle school age. I remember back then I'd come home from school every day and just read the field guide for an hour every single day. I had that thing memorized. And I would go out birding a little bit more. As I got busier with school and stuff, I just stopped doing that. But I still have all of the knowledge from when I was really studying them, and I'm always aware of the birds around me. Even when I'm inside looking out the window, or if I'm on a walk, I'm always listening, always watching the sky. I was worried when I learned to drive. I was like, I'm going to lose all of my bird watching time in the car because I can't just be staring at a bird when I'm the one behind the wheel.
You were worried about getting a driver's license because it would reduce your bird watching time.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So what would you say is one of your top special interests right now?
Birds are still there, like I said. They're just always in the background. That one's probably my specialist interest, just because I feel like it's a part of me, having been there for so long, and like the first one that I remember. But right now, the one that I'm into is Death Note.
Okay.
Anime slash manga slash there's a bunch of different versions. My sister and her husband showed me that show earlier this summer, and I have fallen down the rabbit hole. That's my current one for sure.
So tell me about like what fascinates you or interests you about Death Note. What is it that you love about it?
Yeah, I really love the concept because it's like a game of wits between two really genius people, and so seeing them try to outsmart each other I think is really fascinating. Another reason that I think I really connected with it well is one of the characters is very clearly autistic. And I also enjoy, like, I'm really drawn to autistic characters who never had to mask their autism, who are just unashamedly themselves. So I think that's a big part as well.
Well, let's talk about masking a little bit then. What is masking?
Masking is hiding the symptoms of your neurodivergence to be more palatable to the people around you, to society. To me, it was a lot of, I learned to play a character, and the character was what was expected of me at school. So I was a good student, didn't really get into any trouble or anything like that. I'd be friendly with classmates, but it was like, I was playing the game. It wasn't super genuine.
What does masking look like in your current life?
I still mask, especially in situations where I'm with strangers. When I'm around family and friends, especially friends who are also autistic, the mask is a lot thinner. But sometimes I think that the only time I'm really ever fully unmasked are when I'm alone.
Yeah. When you first discovered you were autistic and neurodivergent and started to fully understand what that means and embrace that, did you feel like you were able to take the mask off whenever you wanted to? Or and if not, why?
Yeah.
What was that experience like?
Yeah, that was a long process of trying to figure out what was actually me and the neurotypical persona that I've been living as for all these years. It was really hard, honestly.
Yeah. What was hard about it? What's been difficult, and how's that process been for you?
There's a lot of self-reflection and a lot of experimenting. My special interest at the time was the Dream SMP, which if you don't know what that is, you don't want to, trust me.
Okay.
It's a Minecraft server for YouTubers, but
Okay. Right on.
yeah. And so at the time it was like, okay, I'm going to try not hiding that from people. And I'm going to try, I had joined a bunch of autistic Facebook groups and just interacting in there and not thinking 17 times over the thing that I've written before I posted it.
Yeah.
Just trying to be a lot more genuine.
What are some ways that your neurodivergence has actually helped you thrive and succeed in certain situations?
I think school, academically, my ability to focus, and teachers, I could not figure out how to please my peers in school, but teachers had very clear expectations for me. Show up on time, turn your homework in on time, get the right answers. I was like, oh, I can do all that. That's easy peasy.
Yeah.
And so I did really well in school. I got a full tuition scholarship for college. I did really well in college as well. Not quite as well as high school. Didn't quite graduate with the 4.0 a second time, but I did end up with a really good job. I'm a software engineer. I think all of that was definitely helped by my autism. Now that I am working a job, there are a lot of strengths that are really useful as well. Like seeing the details and the little edge cases, thinking through all of the implications of a particular change we're making, or just keeping things organized. If there's something ambiguous or a chaos of information, I'm really good at taking that and distilling it down into organized parts and making sure that everyone's on the same page. So that has definitely been super helpful.
So I heard focus, organization, understanding complex systems and how things relate with each other. Like you said, edge cases, being able to make predictions and interpolate from current circumstances to edge cases. And so how about in different circumstances? For example, your autism often manifests in social situations as a difficulty. Are there any aspects of connecting with other people that you feel like autism might actually be a strength? Something that helps you?
Yeah, for sure. I remember in college, I had a best friend that I lived with all 4 years. We got really close. And she would often come to me for relationship advice, like romantic relationship advice, which is funny because I've quite literally never been in a romantic relationship before. And I asked her about it once. I was like, why do you come to me? I don't know what's going on. And she was like, because I know I can trust you to give me sort of an objective view of the situation, like a more unemotional analysis of what's going on. She was like, we had another roommate who was a little bit more, I don't know, she was very like excited all of the time and bubbly. And she was like, I go to her when I need someone to scream with. And then I come to you when I want a reality check.
Level-headedness, being able to see things clearly. Yeah, love that. So what are some hacks or strategies since discovering, well, maybe some of them you discovered even before you knew you were autistic? Like, what are some workarounds, life strategies that you found to help you manage your neurodivergence?
Yeah. Being able to accommodate myself is the biggest advantage of knowing more about my neurotype, because now I can be like intentional about it instead of just stumbling into them, and I can try new things. I think definitely the biggest one for me is like being able to DoorDash when I cannot cook myself something. Having the financial security to live alone if I need to, just to have that space. Having the money to pour into my special interests when I'm really into it. Having the strengths that were able to get me money to help me with my weaknesses worked out really nice for me. But I know that's not the case for everybody. And that's definitely not what all of my self-accommodations are. I think a big one for me is also working from home. Being in an office is just so loud, distracting, and exhausting, and I get so much less done. Then I have to commute, which is also loud and stressful. Being in an environment where I control the temperature, I control how bright it is, that kind of stuff, super helpful. I also do a lot of planning ahead when I know that something exhausting is coming up. If I'm going on a trip soon, I'll make sure to plan in a week after the trip where I don't have any responsibilities and I can just do nothing and take the time to recover. I use fidget toys a lot. I've got a bunch on my desk. I've been playing with them throughout this whole interview. Tends to work nicely when I just have to talk to someone because my hands need to be doing something at all times.
Yeah. What is it about that? What effect does your hands being busy have on your ability to talk to people or to focus? Or can you explain what that experience is like?
I don't know. They just move on their own. If I'm not thinking about it, they're just doing it without me thinking about it. So that must be the natural state for me. Hands just doing something, my body just. And if someone wants me to sit still, like is very commonly expected in elementary school, then I'm spending all my mental energy on making my hands stop. Giving my hands something to play with is good because then they can just do their thing and leave me alone, and I can focus on what I want to focus on.
That's fascinating. Okay, so the way you described it, let me echo it back and you tell me if I understood it. Your natural state is that your hands want to be doing something and moving. If you're in a social setting where your hands and body like can't be moving, that it actually takes this mental effort to suppress it, and it reduces your focus, and it's draining to your energy. So if you can give it something that's socially acceptable to be doing, it is kind of that best of both worlds where your body can do what it needs to do without the mental effort of suppression, but the people around you aren't bothered by it. Does that sound right?
Yep, exactly. And I think that kind of circles back to working from home because when all people see of me is a Zoom window, I can have my hands doing whatever I want outside of frame. But when I'm in person, it could be distracting to other people in the meeting if I'm playing with a fidget toy or whatever. In social situations where I don't have my fidget toys, like when I'm not at my desk, I usually do have my phone, and oftentimes I will find myself playing with the pop socket on the back of my phone. Yeah. So I've broken many a pop socket just because I always fidget with it without noticing when I'm places where I don't have a fidget.
Would you say your need to fidget is constant, or does it depend on whatever it is you're doing in your situation, your environment?
It probably depends on the situation. If I'm just chilling, about to take a nap or something, if I'm really tired, I'm not usually fidgeting. Pretty much always when I'm talking to someone, I'm fidgeting in some way. I also tend to fidget when I'm anxious. It's amazing. After I learned about autism, one of the stereotypical stims that autistic people do is hand flapping. Yeah. So I was like, I'm going to try it. And then it made my anxiety less bad. And I was like, oh, well, that's magical, isn't it? I can just hand flap and then I feel better. This is great.
Yeah, but it was never something that you even let yourself try because it was, or at least something that quickly got suppressed because of how socially unacceptable it is. Have you ever heard of the YouTube channel called Hot Ones? Yeah. Where they do interviews with celebrities while they eat hot wings? Something I've observed is building as they get to the hotter and hotter, the spicy, they're higher on the Scoville scale, they start to stim. And these are people who are obviously not autistic, or at least some of them. I mean, I can't speak for all of them, but there's many that are like really, really not autistic. But when they get into this like really uncomfortable experience, they start to rock back and forth. They start to shake their hands. They start to do these things that are like physical stimming. And it made me realize, is it just that that's actually a really natural response to extreme discomfort? Autistic people just experience that extreme discomfort in situations which neurotypical people don't ever experience. Or at least they usually don't experience it when they're just talking on a Zoom call. But an autistic person really does, right?
Yeah. Stimming is definitely a human thing and not an autistic thing. It's not uncommon to see a toddler flapping their hands, no matter what their neurotype is. Most people tend to stop at some age. And I've always wondered, is that just everyone peer pressured each other into stopping, or did they just not need to do it anymore? Or did stopping not cost them as much as an autistic person? I don't know.
Yeah, I've observed the same. Well, I interrupted you when we were talking about the hacks and strategies. And so you were talking about stimming and fidget toys and stuff. What are some other hacks or life strategies that you've found to help you manage your autism?
Yeah. This one's a little bit more amorphous than some of the other ones I've talked about, but like just generally working with my brain instead of against it. I used to work against my brain all the time. If I didn't want to focus on something, I'd just force myself. It would take longer and a whole lot more effort, but I would like, this homework's due tomorrow. I have to do this no matter what. Nowadays, I really try to avoid doing that and rather just work with my brain instead. Something that I struggle with at work is code reviews, like reading other people's code and analyzing it and leaving comments. I have to be in a certain mental state to do it well. If I have some code reviews to do and I can feel the brain be loud today, I go do something else. Sometimes if I can do something where I can just dig in and focus, something that I enjoy for a little bit, then that'll get me into the state where I then would be able to do it. And obviously sometimes I just have to buckle down and try. Same with housework. If I really need to clean one part of the house, but I know it's not going to happen today, I'm like, okay, it's okay. Nothing's burning down. No one's going to die if I don't do this today. I will just wait until brain says yes, and we'll do it then.
Are there any more that you are excited to share that you found helpful that might be helpful to others?
Let's see. Another thing, especially this helps with housework, I really hate doing the dishes. So I let them pile up until the sink is too full for me to do stuff anymore. At that point, I'm annoyed enough to get over the mental hump of not wanting to do the dishes.
Yeah.
But I did find a way to do it proactively. And that is if I'm cooking something that has to sit there and cook for a bit, or if I'm waiting for water to boil, then I'll hurry speed do some dishes while I'm waiting. I wasn't going to be able to get into something I wanted to do during that short amount of time anyway. But then I am able to do chores. So that's nice.
Letting yourself do a little chunk here in the cracks without the expectation that you have to do all of it.
Yep.
I like that one. Are there any media representations of neurodivergence that either resonate really strongly with you or like really frustrate you at how awful they are?
Yeah. I'll be honest, I have more in the ones that I resonate with than the ones that frustrate me, because if something's frustrating me, I just stop engaging with it. I'm aware of other autistic characters and the criticisms that the community has for them. I know The Good Doctor is generally regarded as not super great autism representation, but for me, the characters that I care about their autism are the ones that I like. Talked a little bit before about the character in Death Note who is autistic. Really, there's probably multiple characters in Death Note that are autistic, but L is the main one. He's the detective. And I really love, he sits weird. Like, he sits with his feet up on the chair, and so he's just crouched all the time. You never see him sitting the normal way. In one clip, the other guy asks him, like, why do you sit like that? And he's, I don't sit like this because I want to. If I sat any other way, my deductive reasoning would be reduced by 40%, which I love because I'm like, if you're doing something that's uncomfortable to you or like sets off your sensory sensitivities, like that makes sense because now you're spending 40% of your brain power on the fact that you're uncomfortable. And he also is always eating sweets and fidgeting. So I just love that he is unashamedly himself. And it definitely gets him into trouble sometimes, especially his bluntness. The bad guy he's going up against is much better at manipulating people than L, and that becomes his downfall in their dangerous competition. I just love that he's probably the character that I've seen that is textbook DSM. You could absolutely diagnose this guy just from the show. Yeah. Another one that I really love is Tech from The Bad Batch, one of the animated Star Wars shows. Okay. He's not quite like the savant type autistic that you see stereotypically in media, but he's definitely like the nerd character. The Bad Batch is a group where they started with stereotypical characters. You have the leader and the edgy one and the nerd and the strong one. But I feel like they did a really good job of developing each of them further into more like three-dimensional characters. And I love the way that Tech is weird and his family doesn't always understand him, but they always do appreciate him and love him, and they let him be himself. There's a scene where the Bad Batch kind of adopt this little girl, Omega, and so it's all these soldiers trying to raise a kid. At one point, one of them leaves the group, and Omega's really upset about it because this has been her family for the whole show so far, and now one of them is missing. Later, they have a chat, and she's like, "Why doesn't it seem like you're upset? Like, why aren't you upset about this?" And he basically is, "Just because it doesn't look like I'm upset doesn't mean I'm not upset. We have to respect their choices, but I still feel as much as you, even if it doesn't look the way that you would expect." And I really love that.
Can you share how that manifests in your own life? Like, do you feel like oftentimes, is that a misconception that you've felt in your direction, that people think you just don't feel anything?
Oh, yeah. Pretty much everyone would describe me as stoic growing up, just like emotionless, just rolling with the punches. But that was very much not always the case. For a long time, I thought I just didn't feel things. But then I realized I just didn't know how to express it in a lot of situations.
How do you feel about the current societal understanding of neurodivergence?
I think we have been improving a lot. Our current understanding of neurodiversity is so much better than when I was a kid. I think it's even better than 4 years ago when I first started learning about it. 4 years ago, it was common to see people openly talking about having ADHD, but autism was a lot more stigmatized and a lot more hush-hush. And I feel like that's starting to not become the case as much, which I love. I love being able to talk about it more openly with coworkers. I also feel like we have a ways to go. Ableism is very baked into our society, and it's very hard to undo that, especially internalized ableism against yourself. It's so baked in that you bake it into yourself against your own disabilities.
Do you identify as being disabled because you're autistic?
Yes, 100%. I believe one of the definitions of autism is a neurodevelopmental disability.
Yeah.
At first, I was resistant to using the word disabled with myself, but as I sat with that, I would hear people online say, "Oh, autism is a disability. If you have autism, you are disabled." I was very quick to accept that I was autistic when I found out about it, but slower to accept that I was disabled. But when I thought about it, I realized I didn't have a good reason to accept one word but not the other. It was ableism in myself that was afraid of being identified as disabled. Since then, I've learned disability, being disabled, that's not a dirty word. It's not a bad thing. Disabled people are not less. I've been doing a lot of mental work to unpack that for myself.
Yeah. Okay. Ableism is basically the belief that if you have a disability, you are lesser, and there's these negative feelings. They're less human, less worthy of love and respect. That's ableism, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's helpful. What's the one most common, most potent misconception about you that you wish you could just change?
I think the big thing is like understanding that people have different needs. Like, this was something that I had to unpack for myself when I learned I was autistic too, because I lived my life off of the algorithm of I'm a person, I have certain needs or feelings or whatever. Therefore, they will have the same needs or feelings or whatever. And when I learned that I was fundamentally different at the brain level, I was like, oh, that assumption is totally wrong. And I think if more people realize that, we'd be a lot more understanding of each other in society.
Let's say you have an audience of 100 neurodivergent people out there who are going through their own journey of understanding their brain, their identity. Let's say they're autistic. Is there anything that you wish you could download into their brains
I think the thing that I would download is be kind to yourself. That's the thing I wish I could download into elementary school me's brain. Having the self-confidence to really be yourself and being patient with yourself has made all the difference.
How did you develop that patience and that self-compassion?
I think part of it was just immersing myself into autistic culture with those Facebook groups. Once I got TikTok, I started getting a lot of autism content on there as well, meeting other autistic people on Twitter, like seeing that, yes, there is someone like me out there. That was a huge part of it, I think. Another part of it was honestly moving out and being financially independent, because I was like, you know what? If someone's mean to me, I don't need to keep them in my life anymore. Like, in public school, you're just stuck with your cohort from kindergarten all the way up through when you graduate. I have good coworkers who appreciate me, and those are my everyday peers now. But if I had bad coworkers, then I could just leave. I'd go find another job and be more picky in who I spend my time around. I think I'm also really lucky that my family has been really supportive. I texted them that night that I watched that first YouTube video. I was like, I think I'm autistic.
Yeah.
They were like, okay, what does that mean? What does that mean for you? Help me understand, was the angle that they came from. They've all gone on their own journeys because a lot of them are at least neurodivergent. I don't know that all of them are autistic, but they've been very open and patient and willing to learn. So been very lucky that way.
Probably the last question I'll ask, let's say I had a pill that you could take and swallow and it would alter your brain to be neurotypical. Would you take it?
Absolutely not. I don't think I would be me without autism. One of the greatest joys in life is diving into a special interest. I would be really sad to miss out on that. I think also being disabled has given me much more compassion for other people. I wouldn't trade that for the world.
Thank you. I really believe that a lot of the things you've shared today are going to resonate with people.
Other people were so useful and helpful to me in my early journey of discovering all of this about myself. And so if I can be that stepping stone for someone else, I am glad to be.
And I also want to say thank you again for the role you played when I was first embarking on this journey. You were one of the first people to reach out when we were working together and share your experience, some tips, some warnings, some guidance. And that was really, really helpful to set me in a good direction. So thank you.
Of course. I love helping people become comfortable with who they are. Thank you for inviting me on here. This has been cool.